Hi, and welcome to another edition of the Mediatwits, our special year-end edition. I'm Mark Glazer, executive editor and publisher of MediaShift. Yet another year has gone by, just about, and we'll be looking back at 2015 and thinking about what's to come in 2016. It's been quite a year when it comes to digital media and changes in the way that people are getting their media, consuming it. More people than ever are really going through mobile when it comes to news and information. And that also means that publishers have had to distribute their content in more mobile platforms than before, with special deals on Snapchat, Facebook, with Twitter, and also the rise of some big native publishers like BuzzFeed, Vox, Vice, all getting huge valuations. Is there another bubble in the media? So we'll be looking back at some of the bigger stories in digital media this year and also looking ahead to what's to come on this week's show. First, a word from our sponsors. It takes a village to raise a child and to grow a business. Mediatwits podcast sponsor NextSpace lets you do both with a co-working community and early childhood care and education program under one roof. With NextSpace and NextKids, you can focus on your business and your family without compromise. Visit nextspace.us/nextkids to learn more. And I'm coming to you straight from NextSpace, co-working space in San Francisco. I want to introduce our panel. This week we have Andrew Lee from American University joining us all the way from Malaysia, Connie Guglielmo from CNET, Lily Hay Newman from Slate, Paul Berry from Rebel Mouse, our producer Jefferson Yen in Los Angeles. Connie, what's your take on kind of the bigger stories of the year? What really has stuck out to you?
I would say one of the biggest stories is what didn't happen this year, and that was the Apple smartwatch. People are not as enthralled with the Apple Watch as everyone thought that they would be. We had reports of a recent survey that 9 out of 10 Apple Watch users were just totally non-impressed with the device. And I wouldn't go as far as to call it a fail, because I think that smartwatches are still in their early days, but that was definitely a notable moment in 2015, especially when you consider all the hype leading up to it.
Yeah, no question. Andrew, are you still wearing your Apple Watch? What's up?
I am, but I do have to agree. It's the basic test of if you forget to bring it out of your house and you're in your car about to take off, is it worth it to go back into your house? And I have to say, I can't make the argument for going back into the house, and that speaks volumes about how much utility there is in the watch. It's useful, but not really paradigm shifting in terms of a must-have product. So I do agree there. And if you look at the other Apple product, like the iPad, we talked about that earlier this year as well, about how the iPad's getting kind of lost in the shuffle with larger iPhones and people living on that with always connected, that's your always connected device. And the tablet is kind of, not seeing the same refresh rate of, you must buy one every year or two. Some people are keeping for 3-4 years. So that's another thing that Apple has to contend with, that the watch, the iPad, they're not really healthy products for Apple going forward.
Yeah, what about the, we've talked about, speaking of cutting edge kinds of things, VR has been something we thought about for a long time and kind of dismissed it. But with the move by the New York Times with Google Cardboard, basically giving out cardboards to basically help people experience a migrant story, and then some other stories too. Did you think that might have been something that pushed that over the top, Andrew?
Yeah, I do think that the Google Cardboard VR being packaged with New York Times being thrown on your doorstep was the big moment for VR. Although there's a lot that needs to be done in terms of storytelling. I actually thought that the story the New York Times did wasn't ideal. It was a foreign language story, so you actually experience VR while having to read subtitles at the bottom, which is probably the worst thing you could ever do to get people interested in this. It should be something rich, music, English language, or something for the main readership, but you're actually trying to map your brain into the VR space, but jumping out of it to read the text and going back, and it's really quite tiring to do that. And we already know that Americans don't really like subtitles in the first place. So good first moment for VR, but maybe not for the long term.
I think the biggest moment in VR is not that Facebook bought Oculus, although that is incredibly important, and that's going to change development and research and what we're seeing, but that Mark Zuckerberg had a daughter. And at the Vanity Fair conference where he spoke in San Francisco a month or so ago, he was talking about the state of education. And now that he's got a vested interest in educating tomorrow's kids, starting with his own daughter, the potential for what we could see for VR, especially in education, is going to come to life, because now you have one of the biggest social networks and technologists with obviously more cash than he needs investing in virtual reality, and he's got his daughter as his test case for what he wants that world to look like. So I think that was actually even a bigger moment than the New York Times sending out their cardboard, him having a kid.
I think the VR stuff is super fascinating. I saw a startup in LA with like 3 kids that hadn't even left high school yet. And I put on the goggles and I got in their thing, and I have a little bit of a fear of heights. And it's like, as I maneuvered and I was on this little AstroTurf square and I knew it, but in the game I got to this point where I looked down and I actually didn't fully freak out, but like my body reacted. So it's really interesting what early days it is for VR. I don't think it will explode for media until it ties directly to their video efforts, because that's the one-to-one that has to happen. Every media company realizes we better have a video team now, and we better be figuring out short-form video on Facebook or we're going to be clobbered. There's not that sense of risk with VR right now. And when you think, about your test of is it worth going back out of that car, not for the cardboard, not yet. Like, it's not, I'm not going to be able to get the news in the right way, not yet. So there's a lot that is going to happen before we're all in, that Ready Player One world, if you've read the book, or we're lost there. But I do think I'm still long on it. I think it just is going to require some patience for the right distribution to come that makes it inevitable for media companies to need to be there.
I agree with Connie that the education focus is really interesting, because VR is sort of stunningly applicable to bringing a whole group of people on a journey together. And I know Google's been working on these types of programs for schools, and they have their Google Cardboard version, same version of Cardboard basically. And I did a demo of it where you're all looking at a rock face or something, and someone is giving you information about different, and the VR is helping you to understand where to look. So it's like you're all looking in the same place, and it all locks in, and then there's sort of facts or information, and it's really smooth. It's one of the smoothest applications of VR that I've seen. Even movie making or storytelling or narrative, that is still kind of finding its way, and I think there's been great progress, but the technology and the storytelling have to kind of sync up and keep developing. But I just really saw that classroom application lock in, and it's interesting to think that something could maybe come through education first instead of trickling down to education last.
So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about what's going on in kind of social distribution. And I know, Paul, you're really focused on that with Rebel Mouse, but it seems like we look at someone like BuzzFeed, where they just decide, how much do we really care about our homepage, and really even how much do they care about Twitter? They're so focused on Facebook and so many other platforms and really distributing in other places. Is that just going to continue? And now this news, they just don't even have a homepage.
Yeah, so I think that's the biggest news of this year is Facebook's instant articles, because as it relates to media companies and as we think about publishing, the social networks took the homepage slowly, in retrospect, very quickly. But compared to how article pages are about to go to the networks, the takeover of the homepage was slow. And I think that creates a lot of fear. It does create a lot of risk, but it's a tremendous opportunity. It is such a golden age to be creating content. We've never had the mechanisms to connect content to its audience at the speed and scale that we do today. And the writers and editors and media companies that are obsessing with it, it's incredible. You look at, so the Dodo's one we proudly power. And it's cost them like a tenth of what it took us at HuffPost to reach double the traffic. And it's like, and then, so I think they're funding news. I think Business Insider being acquired at that price, the Elite Dailies, the Viral Novas, the Now This funding. There's a new type of media property emerging, and it's obsessed with distribution. We see it that the way you win search is by winning social now, because Google can't decide what's popular anymore. They can just detect it. They used to be the rainmaker, but when the Paris attack happens, we go to the social networks to find that. We used to Google it. So I'm we have a social discovery piece of our product built in, and it exposes for any article all the authentic, engaged fan pages that love that topic. And whether it's pugs or pit bulls or circuits or neuroscience, like, it's insane how many pages have like over 1 million fans of people that just love it, not bought by brands, not weird media company pushing tricks, real engaged fans. So it's an extremely exciting time, I think, and certainly the most change we've ever seen.
Connie, do you agree with that? I mean, it's exciting, but it's also in a way kind of frustrating when you're at a publisher, you want to get your news out. It's like you can't just publish it on your site. You've got to worry about instant articles, Google AMP, trying to get into Snapchat Discover. I mean, there's so many places now you have to think about. It's just not as easy in some ways.
It's true. I mean, I think distribution is definitely the story, or one big part of the media story this year that, right, if I build it, they will come, is definitely no longer the model. And also it changes what it means to be a reporter in 2016 and beyond, right? It's not about just writing a really good story. It's writing a story that resonates with a particular audience that is on social. If you're talking about a media, though, you also have to look at, aside from all this fabulous investment, which VCs are putting their money in, woohoo, acquisitions, but you have to look at ad blockers, right? Who's paying for this content? And we have a society, particularly here in the U.S., where people just want stuff for free, right? There's no value to content. If there was, then the subscription model would have been, a much more successful way to do it. And so having an ad-based world, to me, is very similar to the social world, because you're playing to the crowd, if you will. And that affects the kind of content you produce, the kind of headlines you write, even the format that you put them in. So is that a good or a bad thing in the long run? I guess we'll see. Some of the trending topics all of the social networks have come out with in the last 2 weeks, it's what you would expect, right? A lot of celebrity stuff, Kardashian, Bieber, Katy Perry still the most tweeted about person with the most followers on Twitter. So that's fine, that's great at one end, but how do you get all of these media companies to support the staff to bring that content? And so the ad blocker is part of the conversation, the idea of what kind of content we're producing, who we're playing it for, and then, of course, how you distribute it and what is the mechanisms. That's all a big part of the discussion.
No question. Lily, what's it like for you? I mean, at Slate, is this something that you think about as a reporter, writing stories, like where is this going to play out? Where is your audience? I mean, you almost have to follow them around in a way.
Yeah, certainly. That's the thing I think about the most, is I don't think any of these mediums for posting content, publishing content are inherently bad, but it does feel like you're a little bit bullied. You have to bring your content to the social network that has, the biggest segment of readers, or you have to package your stories in a certain way, or you have to, be looking at certain topics. And I mean, Slate and myself definitely is also sort of trying to push back and drive the conversation in ways we think are important, and do sort of independent original reporting and publishing original thought. But I feel that pressure, and I just think it can't be a good thing, that there are these groups in media that are sort of completely outside of content production, but are just platforms and have so much power to influence content producers. That seems like an uncomfortable setup.
Right, and are you worried also about kind of the smaller players that don't really have the resources that a Slate or something does, like a smaller operation? It's going to be hard for them to really get to play in this that kind of competition.
Right, certainly, or they really have to buy into something like a Facebook Instant Articles or something to have that third party, in this case Facebook, bring an audience to them, which again isn't necessarily bad, but it just feels a little forced, or that there aren't a lot of options, and that's always worrying.
Go ahead, Paul. I know you got something to say.
It's such a fun conversation.
Now that we've ruined your whole golden age.
No, yes, I have an obviously more optimistic answer or thought on this, but first, quickly on ad blocking, I think it's a cultural movement now. I don't think that it's a software feature anymore, and I think that in media, there's been a lot of smoke and mirrors from a lot of us for nearly 15, maybe 15 years or 2 decades. I have yet, watching this industry, still have a friend, yet no one has come to me and said, oh my God, the other day I clicked this banner, and I got to this amazing thing, and I shared it with everyone because it was so cool. So maybe we were built on something that needs disruption in that sense. And the positive, that sounds very scary. Oh no, but it's been easy. I plug in my ad network and I go right. But it gives media companies the opportunity to go way up the value chain. Because at the same time, if you see the CMOs, and we work with United and GE and Dollar Shave Club and so many of these, they want to be genuine. They want to respect privacy, and they want to, establish trust. And the moment they put themselves in an IAB unit with all the ad tech behind it, they know they violated all 3. So media companies have been learning how to create content worth sharing for a very long time, and writers are the ones that understand this. The key, I think, back, to Lily's piece on and what you guys are talking about with new properties, not having an advantage, and do you have to force yourself to be Facebook 12 cats who just can't stay awake type of content, and I think what we're seeing is actually really exciting and optimistic. One is the cost of new media companies. The cost structure of media companies has to change. We thought every media company has to be a tech company. And that era's over. That's not working out. But that's what's so exciting. Like, We Power Property, Higher Perspectives, 20 million page views a month. It's like one kid and his girlfriend. And they do really cool stuff on the intersection with spirituality and science. The Snug for Time Inc. is like a new property. Tabitha powers that. It's one person reaching over 1 million uniques. The thing that we are discovering from Facebook is if you do it wrong, I don't want to say it that way, but you can feel like, oh, I have to chase the top trends on Facebook and miss that. Instead of, back to Connie's point, is that you publish it and hope they come. When you do an authentic piece that you want your brand to be behind, you have an obligation to figure out distribution to it. And that's not just post it to Facebook and hope. It's like, who's going to love this? This was worth the time. I'm not just doing nip slips and what Paris Hilton did and da-da-da. I'm doing a piece that matters to my brand. But Facebook now has so many, like I was saying, like whether you're a circuit geek or you care about Planned Parenthood or what's happening in gun control, it's given an ability to get that content to that audience. It's just that too few people are obsessing about how to get it there.
Yeah, Connie, what's your take on it? It seems like it's native ads, and the sponsored content is really the only thing you're going to be able to get if banner ads aren't going to work, and the kind of ad tech that's out there is so horrible. Is that kind of where everything's going to go, is towards this kind of way of working with brands to create something more interesting?
So I think that is one path right now, and I don't know if anyone saw the New York Times did a feature. They did sponsored content on behalf of the movie Trumbo, and the story that they laid out was spectacular from any kind of a publishing and design perspective, and it was sponsored in an ad, but you didn't mind it because it was so well done, and it was so, I guess the word, going back to what we've been talking about, it was genuine, it had real value to the content. So I think that's an obvious path because that's what people have been talking about for the past few years. But, going back to the reinvention of media, media has been trying to reinvent itself forever, right? And I remember the desktop publishing revolution. Everyone's going to do a newsletter because you can just put it out in PageMaker and, a stamp, and there you go, right in the mailing list. But we haven't seen any kind of that similar reinvention or innovation in ads, right? The sponsored content is just taking the media of new ways of storytelling and dumping an ad into it. And so I think that we need to see a reinvention of the ad industry and a recognition that if they want to be genuine and want to engage with people, that some of the new media formats and the innovation has to come from them as well. Because you're right, and how many years I've been on the internet, I never click on a banner ad. I don't even know why they bother, right? But there's some economic model to it. And I think there's something inherently wrong in the world where the advertiser gets to decide what the value of your content is on a CPM basis versus you, the content producer. That's a complicated model to shift. But going back, we will see branded content, sponsored content, native ads, whatever you want to call it, because that's the thing du jour. But what we really need to see is some of the entrepreneurs and innovators in tech use their brain power to come up with new advertising that is meaningful if we're going to continue to be ad funded.
Well, and let's talk about a little bit about podcasting, because this is an area where the advertising is kind of baked into the content in a way, or it seems a little bit more genuine. If Mark Maron is talking about it, it's going to sound like it's cool. Is that one reason why podcasting is coming back, because it feels a little more genuine when it comes to the ads?
So go back to the radio programs of the 30s and 40s, right? They were always sponsored by, brought to you by Alcoa, brought to you by Ford Motor Company, right? So that's not new, but it is more genuine than a banner ad. So that is, I guess, what's old is new again, and it has resonance. So yeah, I think podcasts are successful because there's transparency, right? People are not hiding the fact that it's an ad. Mark Maron is saying whatever, or Stephen Colbert on the opening night of his show had a whole ad bit on hummus. I don't know if you saw it.
Yeah.
Making that nod to the sponsor. It's transparent. Nobody's getting fooled. Nobody in the audience is saying, "Wait a minute, was that an ad, or is that part of the show?" It is what it is. So I think people appreciate transparency and honesty and genuineness, and that's the transparent part of what's going on that I think is the most exciting when it comes to podcasts.
Lily, what's your take on that with podcasting? Do you think that's one of the reasons it might survive a little longer?
Well, Slate certainly does a ton of podcasting, and has a sort of sister business, Panoply, which does a ton of podcasting. So my thought has been that there is kind of an earnestness to the medium because of how pared down it is. It's not just words, or sort of on a web page you have like visual, and maybe you have multimedia components, and you have the story written in words, and you have all these, it's just sort of the sound of someone's voice, or recording. Not that there, isn't sort of wonderful and deep and fantastic things that podcasting can do as a medium, but it is just that very pure sort of one sense input. And to me, that's what makes that ad business come across in that same way. Like Connie was saying, I suppose you could do sort of an elaborate podcast like World of Worlds or something where it's all a ruse and it's actually an ad, but it's actually an ad for Google, or and but so far, it seems like people really do podcasting because they love it. They put the time into creating that content because they love the medium and they love working in that format. So there hasn't really been that sense that there might be like an ulterior, branding, capitalist-driven undertone. It's much more straightforward.
I think it's also fun to realize that we kind of thought that our attention span was a zero-sum game. And it's like, well, there's these many eyeballs and they look this much. And what we've realized is, oh my God, we've just begun to tap the crazy attention that we can stretch. So it's like podcasts fit perfectly. It's like, oh, there's this time in the day where I can't read, but I can pop headphones in, fine. And like I might be doing work while listening. So it's like, it's amazing. Like Jonah Peretti and I have been working together since 2001, and we used to think about being bored at work. Right? And now you can be bored in line, and you're just like waiting for why be bored there. And now, so I love how this is just like we are just beginning to see how many ways we can split and divide and fragment our attention. And watching Facebook video has been tremendous because so few people seem to get it, how different of a format that is. They think, oh, great, I do YouTube, so I'll just do Facebook. And it's like, no, it's a completely different game that you have there.
I want to touch on also some of the kind of darker sides of things we've seen over the past year, and we've had a lot of security issues and hacking as usual, and it seems like it's been taken to kind of another level with some of the publisher sites getting hacked and the whole Ashley Madison hack that exposed 11 million registered users. Lily, you've been covering that. It seems like it's almost like we won't even pay attention to it unless it's something really spectacular because we just almost expect it to happen.
Yeah, we're beginning to have a high bar, whereas before, we weren't paying attention to anything. Now it's like we have this baseline of hacks all the time that I don't know. It's both ways. We both know more about it, and it takes more for us to pay attention to it. So I guess that's a double-edged sword. But certainly in media, you were mentioning Ashley Madison. Obviously, the Sony hack was extremely high profile, and also just hacks that are so general that touch so many people that it's insane, like the Anthem insurance hack or the Office of Personnel Management hack. Everybody knows someone who was somehow affected by those breaches, or they were themselves. I mean, just those two alone are, I think, more than 100 million people, right? We're a little more than 300 million in the U.S., so this has really gotten to everyone, and that's just me sort of calling out two of the big ones kind of at random. We all remember Target from last year and Home Depot, some of those. So I really think every year it feels like it's the year of the hack, but I think it's more like we're on just sort of an upward trajectory, and it's going to keep coming for a while longer because we're still catching up to industry really understanding the ramifications, both media companies and retailers and whoever, and figuring out how they can protect consumer data, and consumers figuring out what they want to do and what measures they want to take to protect themselves.
Connie, do you see that? I mean, does it kind of change your behavior when you think about how the insecurity of our data, and also obviously privacy issues too is big too?
I would say that the point is well taken. 1 out of 3 Americans have been hacked, or have had know someone who's been hacked. What did 2015 and 2014 with the Sony hack teach us? Nothing is impenetrable, and nobody can save you from hacks. But what we really haven't yet seen is a hack where you, the individual, are really, really, really put out, that it's become some major inconvenience. Sure, there are people who've had their identity stolen, and identity theft is a problem. But unless your identity is stolen, or your girlfriend's or mom or dad's or somebody that you're close to and you have to deal with it personally, it's still a kind of an esoteric problem that happens to other people. You know it's there, you know it's close, but you haven't felt the pain. So I fear that this year we will all feel more pain, and that will escalate what we're willing to do, because that's what it always comes down to, right? When it becomes a very real problem to you is when people pay attention. But there's no question that, as fast as you can put in a security, solution or tout, whatever, that it's going to be hacked. It's a game, right? These hackers are not going to, I'm going to give up. That one's just too hard for me to crack. I mean, that's just never going to happen. So there does have to be a mindset change about how much we share and what data and what's secure and what's not. But again, it's not. I don't think it's going to happen until there's an unbelievably invasive hack that we all feel some measure of personal pain. Ashley Madison, didn't touch me personally. I guess I'm happy to say. So until that happens,
Oh, I love it. I totally agree with Connie. So I think the identity apocalypse is coming in fast, and it's what we're set up for is that we all in 2016 will be the year we learn to lie to Facebook. Because we've all ridiculously told them the truth, like where we were born, what our birth date is, our mom and her virgin maiden name, our first pet, our teachers. It's ridiculous. And at the same time that we did that, we put all our money online. Like, here it is, just like I don't want to deal with paper. You don't need to know me as a person. Just this is my password and give all my money. So that's when all the pain, I'm shocked that all the banks aren't frantically sending us an envelope and saying, send your hair. We need your hair today. Because the moment Facebook's entire thing is online with all the stuff on huge text files, then we all feel the pain. And you walk into the bank and say, but I'm Paul Berry. And they say, no, sorry, he was just here. And so this is like I think that it's not that outlandish. It sounds crazy, but I think we're all set up for that to be the pain that teaches us to, at the minimum, lie to Facebook a little bit so you're not the first to slaughter.
Lily, did you want to jump in about that?
Yeah, I totally agree with Paul, but I also think that when you think about sending your hair to your bank, the pain is going to be brutal, and there really could be some consequences that are irreparable for our lifetimes. So the hair made me think of it. Some people's biometrics were compromised in the OPM breach, like fingerprints. If your fingerprints are compromised, what are we doing about that? Do you have other fingerprints that you can put on instead? If somebody has data that allows them to spoof your fingerprint, theoretically, that's going to be a problem for the rest of your life. So I just agree with what everyone's saying, that I feel like the pain hasn't hit yet, and as someone who covers this every day, I'm just bracing and so not wishing it on anyone, what I'm seeing every day, because it's just, I think that we haven't really allowed ourselves to recognize the full suite of implications of what the road could be to securing our personal data.
Well, on that happy note, we'll wrap up for the year. But I know there's a lot a lot going on in the new year that we'll be following. I want to thank our guests, Andrew Lee in Malaysia, who I think lost his connection, Connie Guillermo at CNET, Lily Hay Newman at Slate, Paul Berry at Rebel Mouse, producer Jefferson Yen. I want to thank PBS for supporting us up until this year when we went independent, which is a big move for us. You can follow us now at Mediashift.org, on Twitter at the Mediatwits, past episodes on SoundCloud and YouTube. And if you enjoyed the show, please subscribe on iTunes and leave us a review. We will catch you all next year. Thanks, everyone.